Greetings, loyal viewers, and welcome back. It feels nice to be right in front of the camera again. And by the way, if you're wondering why it's in a different position, it's because I got a new, bigger monitor here now, and I've had to change up the setup on my desk a little bit. Not that you could tell from here, but oh well. So, anyway, as I promised earlier, I think it was about 3 or 4 days ago, let's now go ahead and talk about the newest Owl House special, For the Future. Let's start with probably my favorite part of the special, the way it manages to bring character arcs full circle, at least in terms of their own internal struggles. The two characters who stand out in this regard are Luce and Willow, so let's talk about the latter first. I mentioned how in my previous review for the last special that she sorta got sidelined a little bit, at least when compared to the other characters. Thankfully, that's not the case here. I think it's been pointed out by fans for quite a while now that Willow has been holding back and bottling up her own emotions for the sake of being a reliable friend to others, which was made especially evident with her own little therapeutic method in Labyrinth Runners. Even in the last special near the end, when she was still very much crying, she wasn't majorly sobbing, despite clearly being terrified at the prospect of losing Hunter. Even more so than the rest of the group, I might add. And thus, we finally see near the end, mixed in with also having saw what happened to one of her dads earlier in the special, the results of having kept her deep emotions locked up for so long. The results are a bit messy, to say the least. This, of course, leads to my favorite moment where, after Willow gives up on herself and declares herself half a witch Willow, we see Hunter perform his teleportation move, courtesy of Flapjack having sacrificed himself to save Hunter's life at the end of the last special, to finally comfort her and allow her to finally let out all of her emotions. While I admittedly would have liked to have seen more of it, it does lead to Huntlow pretty much being made canon by the end. And I like the way that it's executed in a way that makes sense for their respective characters and doesn't feel too forced. Truth be told, I initially was kind of hesitant about Huntlow when we first had our hint about it from Dana with that Christmas-themed artwork she did. I think it was like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe. So to see it actually culminate in such a sweet way was honestly kind of touching. And by this point, I can definitely say I am Huntlow for life. But I'm still a number one Lumity fan. So, And now let's talk about Luce. I love that it begins by making it very clear up front that she still hasn't changed her mind or recovered from her extreme guilt, despite the reassurance she got from her friends and even her girlfriend Amity. Even with a nice little reference to the end of Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door in Season 2. I like this a lot though, because as some have pointed out by now, the road to healing and self-forgiveness is not linear, and it's gonna take more than just the aforementioned reassurance to heal from your guilt. I also love the way that in which Camila, despite being a competent and loving parent, doesn't immediately know the best way to approach the situation, but thanks to a down-to-earth conversation with Willow and Gus in the abandoned Owl House, she finally confronts Luce near the end of the special about her said mistakes, even talking about some of the ones she's made, some of them in which are honestly kinda funny, whether they were meant to or not. Before finally revealing the truth about being a secret nerd and how she too had a tough time growing up because of her interests and how she didn't want Luce to go through the same thing. This all culminates to my favorite moment in the entire special where...
I think I just realized something. I don't know why it took me so long to figure out. The only thing I've ever really wanted was to be understood.
This moment in particular here speaks to me for two very important reasons. Firstly, I don't know if I've ever made it clear on this channel before, but I myself am autistic, so I definitely went through some similar situations like that growing up, and sometimes I still feel like I'm trapped in a society where many people don't seem to fully understand me, even when they do get to know me a little bit. But the other reason that it speaks to me is because I'm also a huge nerd myself. I mean, look at what I'm wearing, for goodness sake. In fact, here's a little story. I'm also a huge Godzilla fan. In fact, that's kind of how I got the inspiration for my YouTube name, more or less. But growing up, I was initially afraid to admit that. Hell, even when I was drawing something related to Godzilla on paper, because I do draw a lot, I was embarrassed whenever someone would look over and ask me what I was drawing. That's how embarrassed I was. And also, some people may forget this, but geek culture hadn't quite exploded at that point in time, even as I was growing up, because the internet wasn't as dominant at that point. But now, thanks to the internet, geek culture is in a much, much better state now than it has ever been. Not without its setbacks, of course. And I think it's safe to say that Godzilla himself has come a long way in Western society ever since. I also want to talk a little bit about the Collector and how well this special actually handles him, but in part to keep this review short, I'll actually talk more about him in a future editorial, since there's now a lot more to unpack with him thanks to this special in particular. Now, before we wrap things up, I think it's only fair to talk about my few minor criticisms and how they tie into the more underlying problem that I think we all knew was going to be the case going into Season 3. That being how wasted both Basha and Kikimora were. Kikimora I already at this point in the series see as just wasted potential, despite how admittedly decently well set up she was early on. And sadly, this special does next to nothing to rectify said fact. Basha, on the other hand, you just know that the writers really wanted to do more to make her redemption, more or less, feel somewhat genuine. But because of Season 3 being shortened, and because she's not given the amount of screen time needed as a result, her last-minute redemption feels, well, just like that, a last-minute redemption. It really just didn't feel all that well earned. Now, I want to be clear and point out that I do not fully blame the crew for this whatsoever. I'm sure that they had this idea going on early in production, and they simply didn't want for it to go to waste. If anything, I mainly blame Disney for not giving the show the full third season that, in my opinion, and I'm sure many others out there, it rightfully deserved. But yeah, I really don't have much else to really criticize with this one. I think it's also really good. It's a real testament to the crew's talent that they're still able to tell so much with so little time. That being said, it's kind of hard for me to decide which of these two specials I like more. Like, the first one, while it definitely had a bit of a slow burn at the start, I thought was a little more consistent overall in terms of its quality and having arguably lesser flaws to it. Whereas this one, I really feel like, well, it definitely has a few more notable flaws, mainly due to the lack of time given for the season. I think it's overall a more entertaining watch to sit through, and like I said before, I love the way it brings both Luce and Willow's own character arcs full circle. So overall, I do love this special, and I highly recommend it. In fact, if, like I said earlier in the video, at least I think I did, if not, then I'm gonna go ahead and put a link down in the description below to watch it on YouTube for free. I think at the time of filming this, that thing has gotten over 2 million views. So once again, that really should go to show how much Disney messed up this time. So, yeah. So, like I said in my previous review, I will be back when the next special comes around. Before then, though, I'm going to be doing the aforementioned editorial on the Collector, but I'm also going to be doing my long-awaited countdown, at least I hope a lot of you have been waiting for that, countdown for my favorite episodes of Season 2. In case you're wondering, no, I'm not going to be doing a worst list, because in my opinion, Season 2 friggin' rules. Like, I'm loving what they're doing with Season 3 so far, but Season 2 is just awesome. Like, I honestly don't even think there's really any bad episodes of Season 2 in my opinion. There might have been a couple that I thought were okay, but whatever. So, I don't really have much else to say here, so until then, I'm King Gargantuous, and Take care.